All right, Tate, so we're going to go ahead and start with your paper by looking at some MLA format. Let me just... All right, make it there. So this is good. This is good. This is the correct MLA format. Should already be at 1-inch margin, so I'm not worried about that. You do have some extra spacing here I need to get rid of because everything is double spaced, but that is just how this is right here. Double space, double space, double space. So this right here needs to skedaddle and go away. So this needs to be moved up front. Excuse me. But your title so far is good. Anxiety, depression, the unfortunate side effects of 21st century culture, excuse me. I think that's a pretty powerful title, so that's good. As I skim through this, it looks like you're using some quotation marks, which is good. We may have an issue with in-text citations, which we'll look at. So far, looks okay. Your page numbers continue, which is good. And then we have a little bit of an issue with your works cited. So first of all, the space needs to go away. Quick fix, but be aware of that. This is all alphabetical order, so this looks okay. Let's see. Yes. However, the only thing I'm going to say, because everything looks right. I mean, you technically need a period at the end of each citation, so you are missing the period for MLA format, but this one in particular, depression is on the rise in the U.S., especially among young teens. So I'm just writing on your rubric real quick. Missing period, works cited. This one in particular intrigued me because when you have, Columbia Mailman School of Public Health, this to me reads that it's a journal article, but you don't have the volume or issue. So when I pulled up the article, nope, that's not what I want. This is just a website. It looks like there is this appears online in the Journal of Psychological Medicine. So the problem with this one is because you use this date is you're not taking information from the journal, you're taking information from an excerpt from Columbia. So this needs to be cited as a website. And then what I would say as well is it's kind of a hard call because you've got so many authors and they did author this information, and this is kind of talking about what the findings that were, so I don't think you can really, well, no, you can't really say they're the author, but it is possible that it's not going to let me go up all the way. It is possible you can include Columbia Mailman School of Public Health as the author. You don't need to because I haven't really taught you all that you need to do it that way. So the article title is fine. I would just encourage you to make sure you have that link there. But other than that, MLA format is good. You just have some spacing concerns and you just need to tidy up your works cited a little bit. So moving on from your MLA into the actual content of your paper. Looking at your introduction, I think it's pretty well set up. And well developed. You have a little bit of an intro, and then you build up some background information of how these mental illnesses have been here. And I think your thesis that you have is good as well. Getting a lot more attention, combination factors, depression rate soaring, including the continued development, social pressures, new models for what success is. I think this is pretty good. It lays out what your paper is going to be about, which is good. The only thing I would argue with you, and I mean the language and style is good here as well, is this part right here. The teenage years of human life have always been some of the most unstable and unpredictable. You can always get away with throwing these kind of bigger claims out in your introduction as long as they are explained later. I'm not too sure if I'm hooked on this being your attention grabber, just because it could potentially fall in the realm of, since the beginning of time, this has always been really hard, blah, blah, blah. And, it's not the best intro for it. But I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with your saying, so it's a tough call. So as far as I go, I think it's a decent setup with it. I worry that sometimes you may come across a teacher or professor who will say something like that isn't quite right. But other than that, I think it's pretty good. I don't know why Google Docs is saying this is incorrect, but that is the correct way of doing it. As we move on into your next paragraph, is you talk about the teenage brain growing and changing. And I think you do a really, really good job setting up how this works and a really good job of setting up the evidence and explaining what this means. And we see it right here with Jacqueline Jansen with the quote, and they're susceptible. Now this is part, and this is my fault for the article, which I chose because it does replicate a lot of the research that's out there. On a technicality, what you would need is, because while this is the webinar from her, it is still the source from Jansen. So on a technicality, you should have an in-text citation with Jansen here, because she is the one who wrote the article mostly based on Bearden's work. And it's one of those tricky ones where, because Dr. Carrie Bearden isn't the author of that work that is being included there, you do technically need Jansen as an in-text citation, but I'm going to put that one on myself because I know it's the article that I gave. But I just want you to be aware of that, because if you ever include a citation in the future, what I've seen a lot of people do that you didn't do is people have included a statistic from the World Health Organization where it actually comes from a different source. So it would be like, and honestly, I have not really seen many of these articles so far, but hypothetically, if you had Caroline Miller who quoted the World Health Organization, you still need to quote Miller because that's where it's coming from. But anyways, this is pretty good, and it talks about the mood changing. And I think this is a really strong way to end your paragraph. And I want to commend you on this one, because what I've seen a lot of people do is they get into the hypothetical a little bit, where it's like, oh, the world does this and blah, 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 blah. But by you putting it at the end, that is a really good way to transition. And that's the problem is, and I'll be honest, you don't necessarily have a lot of resources about influence from the world. I mean, you do later on, but I've seen a lot of people so far be like, the world expects a lot of you, and they go on, but there's no evidence. And you purposefully did this in a transition moment, which is good for your paper, because it doesn't necessarily need evidence or anything, because it transitions into what you have as we move on. So as we move on to your next paragraph, your topic sentence is okay. The 21st century has been accompanied by a massive technological revolution. I might add a little bit more to it just so it's more clear what your essay is about, because there are two things I always do when I write papers, and it's really important to know if you have a good paper and to double check your work. The first is you read it out loud. And that's because when you read it out loud, you catch all the errors. And you kind of know your own style, and you know if you said something a little bit off. Second, go through your paper and read just the introduction and just your topic sentences. And I should know a good chunk of what your paper is about, so I can see this. And then one of the main reasons we find depression and anxiety more common in teens is because of the fact that the teenage brain is physically growing and changing. You also need to read like the last sentence. When these factors are combined with influence around the world, it can often be too much for an adolescent to handle. Just reading those two sentences tell me the brain is changing, and then we impose certain things on people that make it hard for them to develop. And then 21st century accompanied by a massive technological revolution, all the way down to these dates, of course, correspond with the largest growth of smartphone use. By 2015, 92% of teens and adults had smartphones, which were introduced in 2007. And then we move on to the educational and family environment for teenagers has also seen a downward shift in the last few decades. So overall, your topic sentences and ending sentences are pretty good to give me a good gist of what is going on. And that skill is important, because if you can read your topic sentence and ending for it, that's how you really hone in and find out if you have a good topic sentence. The reason why this one doesn't work as well as your other ones is, what does the technological revolution have to do with your position of the essay? And it might work if your ending of the previous one was a little bit more specific, but it's not quite there. But I do like that you incorporated the use of smartphones. Maybe your topic sentence could be something about how this technological revolution comes with negative impacts on something. And you go into cyberbullying and body shaming, how there's an increase. So I think overall, because you're just including certain things about this is what's going on, it's okay because you're looking at, as long as your topic sentence is, we see an increase for these different reasons. Now here's where you technically need an in-text citation. This in particular, you're saying that it's had an increase since social media sites, and while this should be common knowledge perhaps, you're talking about an increase or decrease, which to me reads as statistics. So I would say you need some critical context there where you need an in-text citation that talks about where it's from. But as this goes on, I think this is a good quote that you use to explain it. And this is a good job because I haven't seen a whole lot of people really use evidence to talk about how it has comparison. Now, where it gets a little bit hypothetical is right here. Is people only post the most perfect, pristine, and admirable things, not the things that really show who they are. I would counter you a little bit and challenge you to have some evidence or background to back this up, because I think this is a little bit opinionated, that I would get a research just to back you up, because I can tell you I do not post my perfect life. And I mean, that's me personally, and it's not a fair judgment. And this is a very common argument, and I'm not disagreeing with you. It's just I think this involves a little bit of context that you want to invite some research into. You do have an awkward spacing here. You have double space. Make sure there's just one. And then, oh, where did it go? Was it this paragraph? Nope, that's good. Other than that, good paragraph. It's fine. Educational and family environment as we move on to this one, since I'm running out of time. I think this is a really interesting quote that you have out there. However, I might add a little bit more. Do well in school so they go to college or university. Sure, that is a lot of pressure that is being made on kids, only made to be successful. I think people do push that a little bit more. I don't think it's necessarily true for everyone, but that's a really interesting quote that I think you explain well. Now, the instant success in life, let me talk real quick about your conclusion, because this is my biggest concern with your paper. So, is not the conclusion, but the previous one. Depression has been a problem faced by many teenagers, blah, blah, blah. Recaps what you have, and I like that you have this kind of call to action. Don't forget that we are losing something by inviting this technology and these different things. Now, my problem with this paragraph, your conclusion is good. Point blank, period. My problem with this previous paragraph is you need more substance a little bit here and there, and you need to split them into two ideas. You talk about instant success that people want, which is an interesting, and they see their hero. However, it's this part that I think maybe this is in your own parameter that I know you are going to be college bound, but there's a lot of students here at your school that are not. And for me, when I read instant success, this reads to me TikTok, this reads to me Vine, this reads to me YouTube, and you went a different route that I didn't expect, I guess. So I think for your purpose, I know you're talking about how there's an expectation for college, but I do think this is attributed to people who are not college bound either, so I'd be a little bit cognizant, aware of that. Let's see, privilege. And then you go into a little bit about stress. I think these are good questions to ask. I would maybe start a new paragraph here and maybe have a different topic sentence, because instant success and stress can be two different ideas. And while I don't think they are mutually exclusive, I think you have a lot of interesting things with stress in particular. So you kind of branch off into stress, and then you went back into that instant success. So I think about breaking stress out into a paragraph of its own. So overall, Tate, I think your style and language is pretty good. There's a few moments where I think you need to add some clarity that I talked about, or some more context to where it is, including those in-text citations. But other than that, everything's pretty well developed. I think your organization can just be tweaked a little bit in this paragraph, and you are good to go.